It is indeed looking like the RTX 4090 is just around the corner, as we're now starting to see even more shots of the actual cards themselves, complete and ready to go. This looks like Zotac's GeForce RTX 4090 Amp Extreme custom graphics card. Pictured, and it says massive quad slot coolers. So need some room in your case and a big power supply for if you're looking at one of these. And it's looking like we're even seeing the box packaging. So again, this does seem to be the real deal. These things are leaking out all over the place. And I've got some information, so this is still leaks and rumors, all of that. But according to WCCF Tech, and we'll dive into their sources in just a second, they're saying RTX 4090 will indeed launch in October, with the RTX 4080 coming in November as both a 16GB and 12GB model, with a wattage difference between those two as well. Now, for me, that would be shocking if they were both just simply called a 4080 16GB and a 4080 12GB if there were these massive power differences between the two. Because I would assume performance differences going along with that. I mean, I know having more VRAM would use more power, but I don't feel like that much would be explained. Anyway, so where is this coming from? Well, it's looking like one of the, what are they calling it? The senior editor of Chip Hell, Napoleon, states that, and here's the actual post, so I can probably get that up on the screen a little bit better. Duck down, shrink out of the way. He says, originally it was the flagship this year. In October, who knew that I just got the news that it will be officially released at the September 20th conference. So this is basically confirming, at least from this source, which is still not an official source, that we should be expecting to see the reveal at GTC, like I've been reporting on earlier. And the flagship will indeed come in October. And this should be stable, but who knows? And he says the new 80 nights will also come in a month. So that's the source for some of that. Although then WCCF Tech themselves say our sources, so WCCF Tech sources. Now I will comment on that WCCF Tech certainly has leaked information about upcoming hardware, claiming their own sources and got it correct in the past. However, I've also seen them leak information from their own sources and get it wrong in the past. So I'm not going to say this is 100%, but it does line up with other leaks that we have seen. So they're saying their sources also pointed out that the GeForce RTX 4080 will get those two variants, the 16GB model and the 12GB model. They're admitting that we've already heard those rumors from other sources, but they're saying based on the data provided to us, meaning WCCF Tech, it looks like the 16GB model will have the reference TGP of 340 watts, while the 12GB model will have a reference TGP of 285 watts. So the kind of new information here that they're supplying from their own sources is that wattage amount. And as they mention here, that's a 20% difference in wattage, which would be quite significant. So I'm curious if there's a 4080 and 4080 Ti, or maybe they're not both 4080s, because one thing that happens with a lot of these early leaks and rumors is a lot of times what you're really seeing is the GPU die specs without an actual name brand like 4080 attached to it, like a model number, if that makes sense. So anyway, we'll see what happens with that. But additionally, confirming that we should be seeing 4090s coming anytime now is that Gigabyte is confirming their, through the Eurasian Economic Commission, they're listing a whole bunch of RTX 4090 models. Now, I'd be, I don't know, impressed if they launched this many RTX 4090 models. But I don't know, maybe they're just trying to reserve all of their various names that they could go with, and we won't actually see all of them. But what's interesting to me is what we don't see here. They're only reserving their RTX 4090 at this point. We're not seeing them listing 4080s or 4090 Ti's or 4070s. So this is just further reason to believe that we will be seeing the 4090 well before any of the other models from this generation. We're also seeing RTX 4090 cards listed at retailers in Australia at some pretty high prices, although these are, of course, out of stock, and I would assume that these would just be placeholder prices, so don't read too much into that. But yeah, some big numbers there, although I guess that would be Australian dollars, which is at least not quite as bad. Anyway, Copite 7 Kimi, we can't go a day of GPU news without mentioning Copite, is claiming that 8106 is not very strong. The typical TSE score is less than 7,000. And he's saying, and both 8106 and 8107 are using PCIe by 8 lanes instead of the full 16 lanes. Now, this is something we've certainly seen before using regarding that kind of lane usage. For example, AMD got a bit of flack for their RX 6600 line using PCIe with 8 lanes. But the fact is that if you're on like PCIe 4.0, or maybe these will even support 5.0, that's fine. It's when you try to slot it into a motherboard that's on a slower generation and you only get the 8 lanes, then depending on how strong the GPU is, you could get a little bit of a bottleneck in certain situations. This is certainly nowhere near as bad as seeing like the 4 lanes I think we got on like our 6400 and 6500 XT from AMD this gen around. But anyway, the TimeSpy Extreme score is less than 7,000. That's interesting. And what is 8106? Well, this is what I was meaning as far as I think sometimes the leaks are actually attached to things like this, and then people put a name on it, right? So we would probably expect that to be the RTX 4060, since the other GPU dies are kind of claimed. So that would be what we would expect to be a 4060. Now, this is a WCCF Tech article reporting on this same leak from Copite. And so here's the thing. They're placing the score at 7,000, although it doesn't take a math teacher to point out that this score is less than 7,000, okay? So what you're seeing in this chart is WCCF Tech listing it at 7,000, but like I said, it's actually being reported as less than. So if this is true, that does place it below GPUs like the 3070 Ti and the RX 6800. And the RTX 3070 is around 6.7K, right? Which is, again, less than 7,000. So this is putting it seemingly between a 3070 and a 3070 Ti. And if it's less than 7,000, that could put it closer to that RTX 3070. So this could point to the RTX 4060 giving us roughly RTX 3070 levels of performance. And that would be fairly typical, well, maybe not in every generation, but we saw, for example, the RTX 3060, for example, being very similar in performance to an RTX 2070. So, having your new 60 class card compete with your previous Gen 70 class card is certainly not mind-blowing or anything like that. And the 4060 does look like it would be a jump in performance over the RTX 3060. Because remember, the 3070 is significantly more powerful than an RTX 3060. There's a big performance jump there. So, that's not horribly weak, although, Copite is saying not very strong. So anyway, don't expect to be doubling the performance of your 3060 with your 4060. For me, what matters is what price it comes in at. So that will matter because, what they call it doesn't matter nearly as much as how much it costs. Now we're seeing, again, now I've already reported that we've seen mega-sized GPU on Twitter reporting that there's going to be an update to the RTX 3060 to launch an 8GB model, along with the 3060 Ti with GDDR6X memory rather than just GDDR6. Now, this is videocards.com claiming that they've confirmed with board partners. So they have contacts, if these are being if these are coming soon, they have to actually be being manufactured by board partners. So videocards.com claims to have sources within those board partners that will be making these, and they are confirming that this is indeed planned, but should not be expected for another few weeks. Now, this is really interesting. I would actually like to see a cheaper version of the 3060, anything to get its price down from its ridiculous $350 to $400 pricing it's still sitting at would be nice. So, but you know, what does it do for the performance? They're also mentioning in this article that, you know, if you throw in the GDDR6X on the 3060 Ti, we don't know exactly what speed that 6X would be running at, but if it's running at the same 19 gigabits per second as the 3070 Ti, then the memory bandwidth on that 3060 Ti would go up from 448 gigabytes a second to 608 gigabytes per second as a 36% increase, so that's pretty substantial. Anyway, we'll see what comes of this, and I think, to me, this would make sense if we're going to see NVIDIA taking a while to get their mid-range 4000 series out there and trying to continue to compete with these 3060 and 3060 Ti models. We have heard NVIDIA talking about having their 4000 series laying on top of the 3000 series, at least for a while. So perhaps this has something to do with that. Now, moving into a bit of CPU news, Videocards.com is reporting that the 7600X has been tested in Cinebench R23, but what's interesting here is with and without core performance boost enabled, so with it enabled and disabled, seeing a 14% performance loss if you turn it off, or gain if you turn it on, whichever way you look at it. But with a massive benefit to the thermals of the card, of the CPU, because here's the issue. We've been seeing reports that the 7600X runs incredibly hot. It can boost up to 92 degrees Celsius in this test, and it looks like by disabling the performance boost, it went all the way down to 56 degrees Celsius. So in other words, you can certainly rein in the temperatures by limiting the boost frequencies is kind of what we'd see here, but it is certainly having a big impact to the performance by not allowing it to boost. So I'm wondering if some slightly less, aggressive decreases to the clocks could help rein in the temps with less performance impact. Now, speaking of reining in temperatures and power consumption, so the T models of Intel chips are more restricted thermal designs. I kind of think of the T as thermal. I don't know if that's really what it stands for. But there's a 35 watt, now more on that in a second, not really 35 watt, Core i7-13700T getting some leaked benchmarks. Now, when we say 35 watts, just like all the other wattages, that can be misleading, because the maximum TDP can still go up to around 100 watts at power level 2, but still 100 watts is significantly down from what we see on the the K versions of these chips, for example. And in this leaked benchmark, I believe it's Geekbench, we're seeing its single thread performance actually with this T model, not as fast as a 13600K, but coming in close to a 12900K and 12700K, 12600K, so close to those. And then that's again, and beating the current Ryzen 5000 series in single thread performance. And then the multi-thread performance, we're seeing it coming in beneath CPUs like a 5900X, but a little bit faster than a 12600K. And so it's nice to see, again, that you can, if you're more power conscious, get a more a power conscious chip and still get some reasonable performance results. So you don't have to push those thermals as crazy as most of the chips will be. Now, we're seeing from WCCF Tech that PCI-SIG is warning that there could be potential overcurrent or overpower risk with its 12 VHP WR connectors using non-ATX 3.0 PSU and Gen 5 adapter plugs. Now, what's going on with all this? Well, you might need to be, it basically has to do with these new Gen 5 adapters, and just that there's like a little letter here they quote. This is a big article. I'll link all my sources in the description. You could take a look. But they're saying that please be advised that PCI-SIG has become aware that some implementations of this connector have demonstrated thermal variance, which could result in safety issues under certain conditions. So anyway, we'll see if anything comes out of that, because we might need these PCI 5, adapters for, huge, gigantic GPUs. Anyway, Video Cards is reporting that in China, at least, we're seeing RX 6600 mobile laptop GPUs slotted into desktop cards and working in desktops at a lower price than the desktop version of the RX 6600. Now, I haven't been seeing this in for sale in the US or anything like that, so just throwing that out there is an interesting little tidbit to whom it may concern or interest. And Raja Kaduri from Intel in the graphics department is confirming that the A770 is getting ready for launch. We're seeing this shot of an Intel Arc A770, I believe, being tested in Toronto in the validation lab, getting ready for launch. They had claimed a summer launch, and technically there's still, a few days left in the summer, so we might get them out here. Perhaps more interestingly, we're seeing a response to the question, what's this I've been hearing about Intel potentially bringing the axe down on Intel Arc after just 2 generations? And Raja Kaduri is saying we're about those rumors as well. They don't help the team working hard to bring these into market, and they don't help the PC graphics community. So one must wonder, who do they help? We're still in the first gen, and yes, we had more obstacles than planned to overcome, but we persisted. So he's basically saying, I don't know about those rumors, So Intel, officially at least, is claiming that there's no plans on slowing down here, that they're committed to their GPU line. Now we're seeing some interesting information coming out of Intel's tech tour, and this is regarding Raptor Lake. And this slide, it's a little hard to see here, but it mentions in 2022, the first 6 gigahertz and 8 gigahertz OC world record. So this would be implying that we will see a Raptor Lake chip from Intel coming in with a 6 gigahertz stock and possibly be able to set an overclocking world record. And it says 8 gigahertz there. Now the actual overclocking world records are quite beyond a just 8 gigahertz flat. So we'll see what comes of that. I'm wondering if this means that we'll be seeing a new KS, like a 13900 KS, like we saw with the 12900 KS, especially if it's to compete with the 3D Vcache versions that we'll be seeing coming from AMD sometime soon, because that's what we saw with the 12,000 series when AMD came out with their 5800X 3D. We then saw the 12900KS, which clocked higher and could compete and try to keep Intel with the gaming performance crown. So I'm wondering if that's what they have planned coming out there. Also, we're seeing Dr. Ian Cutress saying that, reconfirm this, and coming from Intel Tech Tour, it looks like that Raptor Lake only exists because Meteor Lake, did I say Raptor Lake or Rocket Lake? The new one. Anyway, too many R's. Anyway, MTL wasn't going to be ready on time. I think that's Meteor Lake. So they started development on this update 2 years ago. And they're saying that the GPU and I/O haven't been updated from Alder Lake, and 41% improved multi-threading performance and 15% single thread based on Spec Int 207. So interesting enough there. The last thing I'll throw in here is I'm pretty interested in these handheld Steam Deck competitor type market. And I finally got my Steam Deck pre-order, and I have to make the call like today whether or not I'm going to buy that. And what's making me hold off, although I think I'm just going to do it. I'll probably sign off this video and just buy the thing. I want a Steam Deck anyway. What's making me hold off on that a bit, though, or at least kind of want to, is these Ryzen 6800Us that come with not only RDNA 2 graphics, but with up to 12 compute units, which is more powerful than the 8 compute units we see in the Steam Deck. And we're seeing these announced consoles with those coming up. And so I'd be really interested to see how powerful those could be. And it's looking like the lowest cost version of this will be coming in around the $630 point, at least in, I think, Chinese pricing, converted to US pricing. Anyway, so that's on the horizon. Looks pretty interesting. And I've got to get to work. I hope all of you have an excellent day.